May I call upon Mr. Sri Kumar Kumaraswamy, Program Director, Clean Air Action, WRI India, to deliver the welcome address.
Great, welcome all. There was a small, tiny break in between in the rain. We all managed to reach here. Thanks everyone for being here. I think I will quickly, just what we are talking about today in terms of reducing transport emissions. You all know WRI, we started working the air quality action, especially the solution oriented approach to air quality action. We've been working in the last few years. We've been working with 10 cities across the country, and in the last 1 year, one and a half years, we also started working in Delhi, thinking about how some of these few sectors where a comprehensive kind of a transition need to happen. What are the ways in which we can support that? Right. So one is this whole thing of Delhi. A lot of talk has happened already on the transport, and in the last few months there has been a lot of discussions, rather controversies and discussions around this. But I think Delhi clearly stands in the crossroads. We have a huge amount of world-class infrastructure, but we are not able to clean our air. Right? We are not able to provide the real quality of life. Though despite having the center of the country and the center of infrastructure development, all of this is happening. Now, how do we really think about providing clean air in a situation where 2.2 million children are getting or already having this lung issues or diagnosed with lung issues in this part of the country, and there is also every year at least 12,000 lives are being lost for PM 2.5, which is related to some kind of ailment. Then there is also it's also that it is not that everything is totally bad. In a policy perspective, we have succeeded in few levels, right? We have managed to deregister huge number of polluting vehicles. We have managed to ensure that the really polluting old vehicles are not plying in the center of the city. We have managed to talk about a lot of EV. We have managed to put more EV fleet, but we are still we are stuck in the trade-off between, is it really for the clean air, how much should be done, right? There is a whole tug of war between this. How much is that the livelihood and the economic perspective discussions are constantly being pulling on both the directions on whether are we doing enough or are we doing both enough for reducing the pollution, and also are we really taking care of the socio-economic impacts around this. So I think that we need to place this also a little bit in the perspective of what is happening in the transport scenario, right? There is a whole, on the one side, there is explosion of private vehicles. There is huge number of private vehicles are getting added. It seems around 500 cars are getting added every day. Then there is also this whole thing of traffic congestion, right? Traffic congestion means more emissions and exposure to emissions. At the same time, we are also, because of the congestion, who is the most affected? The people who are taking buses. We are seeing, because of that, we are seeing a decline in people who are taking buses, right? We all know that more decline in bus takers, that means more people are shifting to private and therefore more of emissions. At the same time, we are also struggling on providing because the buses are reducing, that means the metro travel is becoming more expensive, right? Buses are the cheapest last mile connection. That means people are taking other modes. That means metro is also not becoming viable, right? It's reducing its viability. That means the public transport in overall is getting affected because of the situation. At the same time, we are expanding our cities, right? We are sprawling our cities. Our the sprawl means longer trip length, longer a need for multimodal integration, and there is congestion at more places. So that means at this situation we also need to look at what are the ways in which solving this. Transport planners and policy makers say that okay, we need to solve the problem at a certain, at the emission level, we should change the vehicles, everything, all of that is important. At the same time, at the same time, there is also discussion around, so how do we think about localized solutions? At the same time, are we really thinking about enough on the localized solutions? So this localized solutions versus this larger solutions, there is also this probably the center of the problem is also that the Delhi versus the periphery, right? There is a whole lot of vehicles which are coming from outside into Delhi. Then how are we really going to ensure that the standards are met from among them? And so many other problems. How do we ensure maintenance? How do we ensure overloading, control of overloading of vehicles? How do we ensure certain behavior which causes more emissions? How do we ensure, thinking about a systematic way of cleaning our fleet? That means the technological change, the capital change which is required, the finance side of it, how are we going to manage? All of this on the one side, how are we going to manage all of that? On the other side, we have the trade-off, which is the health. How much are we really ready to do this? Because we don't have much opportunities. We cannot do this trade-off. We will have to really center our thing on the health and the well-being. So, considering all of this, I will request the panelists to reflect on one. We'll do it as two quick groups of discussions. One, we will discuss on, are we really enough understanding this, right? The first is to really understand the transport emissions and the urgency and the approach we may need to be taking. And then the second panel will also go deeper into the discussion on what does ambition means for Delhi, and how do we really rethink our approach been so far if we want to take a fresh and more ambitious view to reduce emissions for Delhi. So with that, I will stop and I will request the team to invite each of the speakers. Yeah. Sorry. Before that, there is a context presentation. Kaustu, please come.
Good afternoon, everyone. So every year in winters, we see Delhi in smokes, and suddenly there are attempts to manage it and then try to see where exactly this is coming from. And transport sector definitely then stands out. So let me try to put some numbers to what Sri was just saying. So till date, Delhi has seen registration of 1.55 crore vehicles. And every year we register 7 lakh vehicles. So that's close to 1950 vehicles per day. And even though we have deregistered many vehicles since 2020, we still have a population of 82 lakh vehicles. This is the official number. And this difference of deregistered might still be plying on the road. The transport sector is estimated to contribute 51% of the PM 2.5 emissions from the local sources specifically. After deregistration, we can see that per 1,000 population, vehicular ownership has reduced, but still it is among the highest in the country. And even though BS6 registrations are increasing, they are still at 30% penetration. However, the picture is not all gloomy. we still have good electric vehicle adoption in Delhi, which is highest, and the penetration is around 11.5%, which is highest in the country. Let's try to understand super polluters, why everyone is behind the older vehicles and what it means, right? So here we have comparison between cars, LCVs and HCVs, all diesel vehicles, and these are the where they are approved for emitting based on their engine design and everything. So if we see the BS3 vehicle is 10 times more allowed to emit than the BS6 vehicle. So even if it is kept in very good scenario, it is still emitting much higher, right? In case of heavy vehicles, this limit goes as per kilowatt hour. That means the power of the engine, and that's why it goes much higher. So we did a study in New Delhi Municipal Council area, because that's a jurisdiction which has clear defined boundaries to understand which type of vehicles are plying on road. So what we found out that 96% of the vehicles are belonging from the NCR region, 70% were from Delhi, and half of them were cars or taxis. If we see the split between the transport vehicles and private vehicles, so in case of Delhi number plates, nearly 1/4 of the vehicles were transport vehicles, and in case of other states, it was 1/3 the vehicles. And we can also see the distribution of age of vehicles. The cars, I mean two-wheelers specifically, are much less aged than if we see the LCVs and cars here. And then we try to quantify the emissions of these vehicles and try to see which emission standard is quantifying more, right? So if you can see at the top part, you can see the CO, PM and NOx share of the vehicles. Even though the percentage share of transport vehicles is very less, but their contribution in that category is much higher. And that's why it should be really seen at. Overall, it showed that 27% of the vehicles are emitting 45% of the CO, 57% of PM, and 69% of NOx. The other side, what Sri said was that congestion increases emissions. So you also tried to quantify how many vehicles get affected by a single congestion hotspot. This is the Anand Vihar area, which is well known for being a multimodal hub. So the quantum of vehicles that experience congestion every day is 1.7 lakh vehicles, right? And these excess emissions from congested vehicles is being swallowed by 40,000 pedestrians and people in other modes. So the picture is not all that gloomy, and the government has realized this since the CNG mandate, and now many schemes have been rolled out. And recently we have seen acceleration in these efforts, which is a really good thing. So we are leveraging technology by using NPR cameras, we are using RFID for parking management. All these efforts are ongoing. At the same time, we are converting our bus fleet to electric. However, and there are some really good best cases that have happened. For example, this motor vehicle aggregator and delivery service provider scheme, it targets one sector, aligns the incentive so that electrification is accelerated specific to a business case. And it's on target, and it has seen 1 lakh registered vehicles just from 21 entities, and major platforms are now shifting to EV. And these are high VKT vehicles which are plying in the city all day long. Another one which was thought impossible but has been a very successful example is about the Chandni Chowk street pedestrianization. Everyone who is from Delhi knows how congested it was, and everyone complained that, for example, a shopkeeper said that our revenue will decrease. But when everyone came together, interest of all stakeholders were taken care of, it has really worked and sustained, as much as reducing AQI, showing AQI improvement of 68%. with all these efforts, why are we still not able to fix the air quality? One is because there are these groups of decision makers, implementing agencies, and academia and experts, and these are not interacting as much as they should. So, when a vision is provided to a city and a long term plan is defined, and everyone collaborates, sticks to it, and reaches for that same goal, is where the city can really achieve its targets. Some of the approaches that can be avoid, shift, and improve in cleaning the fleet, specifically targeting the hotspots, restrictions based on emissions, strengthening the mode shift, and congestion management. Everything collaboratively and comprehensively done together will really show the impact. Some of the global examples of this is, so Beijing, as we know, in 2012 was highly congested, highly polluted. But as the graph shows, their PM 2.5 concentration has drastically reduced as much as 70% in 1 decade, because first they started monitoring it better, they launched a low emission zone, kept expanding it, and as an alternative they expanded the public transport network, and also massively improved their charging network so that people can move on to electric vehicles. Similar is the case of Mexico City, where they really strengthened measurement of vehicles who are really polluting. They promoted active mobility through better street design. They upgraded the public transport so that it becomes attractive for people to take, and they improved the fuel quality as well. And they have also seen 67% reduction in nearly 1.5 decade. So what I want to leave you with is that if the city commits to a vision, starts to test it in smaller areas, because collaborations have its own dynamics, and testing it at a small scale definitely helps. And as soon as you see successes, you can scale it up and stay consistent with the action. But at the end, the focus has to be to reduce system inefficiencies, move more people and goods with fewer vehicles, and transition to a cleaner fuel across the fleet. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaustubh. We will shortly begin our first panel discussion for the session. The attendees joining online are requested to put their questions in the Q&A tab, and we'll try to take it shortly with our panelists. So I invite Mr. Sri Kumar to join the stage, who will be the moderator for today's panel discussions. May I now call upon our distinguished panelists on the dais for the first panel discussion focused on decoding transport emissions and mitigation approaches. Please welcome Ms. Anumita Roy Chaudhary, Executive Director at the Center for Science and Environment. She has been at the forefront of India's fight for clean air, leading campaigns, policy dialogues on air pollution control, sustainable mobility, and public health. Her work has influenced landmark decisions on vehicular emission standards and urban quality management. Next, Dr. Harshal Salve, Additional Professor at the Center for Community Medicines, AIIMS, New Delhi. Dr. Salve brings deep expertise in public health and has extensively worked on the intersection of environment, health, and policy, offering valuable insights into how transport emissions impact community well-being. Dr. Sarath Guttikunda, Founder and Director of Urban Emissions. Dr. Sarath conducts research to support science, policy, and public dialogue on air pollution. He has been a visiting faculty at IIT, Mumbai as well as Delhi. In 2019, Dr. Sarath became the part of Global TED Fellows community and has been instrumentally contributing towards solution building around air pollution mitigation. Mr. D.B. Srinivas, Vice President, Transport Planning Department, DIMS, Delhi Integrated Multimodal Transit System Limited. He has over 30 years of consulting experience in the field of traffic engineering, transportation planning, and road safety audit, and has been instrumentally contributing to air pollution mitigation strategies. A big round of applause for all the panelists. Over to you, Sri.
Great. Thanks everyone for joining again. Now probably we'll start with the Dr. Harshit. This it's been quite some time that we know about the problem of air pollution, but constantly there is if you see the social media discussion and at a mass level, and also in some of the policy discussions, we see that do we are still there is a gap in understanding of the impact of air pollution. That is one. And how do we really accelerate this learnings into both to this policy discussions and also to the at a mass awareness building level? Yeah.
Thank you, Shri, and thanks WR and entire team for inviting me for this very important panel with such a distinguished panelist. So you said a very pertinent question: is there any gap in understanding the knowledge? So knowledge is already there, but knowledge is there amongst academia. Knowledge is there among people working in, let's say, international NGOs, transport sectors. But really there is a deficiency of connecting this knowledge with the actual people who are the, you can call it as a sufferer or our, target audience, the community. So there is and also there is I will say some lack, though Dr. Roy Chaudhary worked closely with the policy circle to connect this knowledge, scientific knowledge with the policymakers also. So this connection is somehow, we really need to build this connection from policy, research, policy to the community. That is what is lacking. And I will say this is not an India-specific challenge. This challenge is there across the globe. The reason is the impact of air pollution. We have, tons of evidence available. Local evidence from India, from Southeast Asia, from various states in India. The evidence is available. But, the impact is such that it is not, visible to the naked eyes, the general community. So that is one factor. Second factor is exposure is also not visible. I will always give this example of cigarette smoking. We have the fight against tobacco since, I will say, 70s. And it took us 3 decades to achieve what we have today in the form of legislation, in the form of implementation with respect to the health and the stronger program. So there the exposure is visible, in the form of cigarettes, BD, the smokeless tobacco we talk about. But here exposure is not visible. So it takes a lot of efforts to sort of make people understand, yes, there is exposure. And in the academia, in the research field, there's a lot of, we as a scientist always go into very deep nitty-gritties. PM 2.5, what is their composition? What is their component of PM 2.5? What is the chemistry, biochemistry about it? But general public doesn't understand it. And their representative also doesn't understand this, the policymakers. So we as a scientist, academia, and the activists really need to convert our existing knowledge base into such a, understandable knowledge, information that it should get deciphered by the common people as well as by the policymakers. Because this question will come again and again. There is information, people are dying, the premature death, more than 4,000, 5,000 premature death. Every year we have in Delhi itself, there is an economic burden of more than 200 billion every year. But still that is not able to get translated at the community level. Because, and I think Kaustubh said in the last slide, he gave us 3, Venn diagram, stakeholders, academia, and policymakers. You all are working in, I still believe in silos. So we really need to connect together in knowledge sharing, also the action sharing. As our exposure is governed by the multiple factors, our interventions are also multifactorial. So we really have to take everyone on the board, convert our knowledge into simplistic language and demonstrate. I think the example he gave about the Chandni Chowk or the Anand Vihar is an excellent example to convince policymakers, okay, this is workable solution, because you cannot blame them for, okay, you're not doing anything. They also need to show some dividend every 5 years. So we have to convert what we want from them into this short-term goals, mid-term goals, and long-term goals. We cannot say that, okay, ban old vehicles. That has backfired. CAQM decision. So that is a classic example how things should not be done. Right? We really need to take everything, and in public health, we take, community is in the forefront, particularly, and we need to invest them in the form of who is vulnerable, what is the economic impact, what is the health impact, and that's the way it's like moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Now we'll request Dr. Sharath. So there is you have done some amazing work on emissions, understanding emissions. So with especially related to transport emissions, do we understand transport emissions enough? That's one. And are we doing, and are we bringing that understanding to the real discussions where, and are we, what are those key things in your, we should be, highlighting more?
Hi, thank you. If anything, I think Delhi is the most studied place. If we understand about emissions and air pollution in any city in India, that's Delhi, because pretty much a lot of groups have worked on it over the years, included, and we have a good understanding of that. So the question is, do we understand about the problem, and do we understand about the nitty-gritties of how transport is contributing to the problem? I think we have an understanding of that. Now, I think that if you take one step back, the question comes back to the same thing as knowledge. So do we have that in numbers? Do we understand that problem in numbers so that we can start putting together either a laundry list or even prioritize what actually makes a big difference in the transport sector? Okay, the same thing. Ban Karo all the old vehicles. Okay, it's a good idea, but numbers don't really justify that, and then our behavior also doesn't really help to achieve that. So when we're going back to those numbers, if we have a good baseline of the transport sector emissions, I think that really helps. I think that's where some of the gaps exist. Numbers are coming from different fields, and it's getting more and more open compared to 10 years ago. But more needs to happen. The Vahan database has been a really game changer in trying to understand just how many vehicles are registered. 10 years ago, it was very difficult to put together a table on how many vehicles are plying, at least registered, forget about plying. Okay, so that has been a game changer. Now, we need to take that a little step further. Now, the question is, how many of them are actually on the road? If we have a good understanding of that, then we can actually put a number to, if we ban, does it make a difference? Okay, or it's just a simple behavioral change that will solve the problem or not. Okay, so a lot of surveys need to be done. Again, things are happening in bits and pieces. The groups are doing some surveys on how many vehicles are on the road, what are the age groups, and how much are they actually using, how often they are using, where are they using. That data is coming in. I think that's all coming in bits and pieces. At some point, all these puzzle pieces have to come together. In that sense, the new IT field has been very helpful. For example, the TomTom website gives you a good understanding of the congestion levels. Again, 10 years ago, that was not the case. We can actually pinpoint and say that this is something that I looked up yesterday. In 2023, 76 hours was spent in congestion in Delhi, in 2024, which was 3 hours more than 2023. Okay, 76 hours means 3 days. 3 days of life is spent on the road. I mean, it's a good metric to have. Now, okay, can we reduce that to 2 days as a first step? No. So having that kind of information, even in small bits and pieces, is really helping us in understand the problem, and hopefully we will take it step further and then put some actions on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's about how to solve it. That is where. So that's where I turn to Anumita. Your
long experience of being in this ecosystem, spearheading many of these discussions. If we little bit zoom out and analyze this, what are the real opportunities? Why are we getting, why are we getting stuck at multiple levels? And at the same time, it's not that, if you want to rethink the whole and looking at the opportunities and the policy pathways to have a more ambitious setup thinking, then what it would be?
Thank you so much, Sri Kumar. And you're absolutely right in what all of you have just outlined. What really, I wouldn't say surprise or puzzle, but it really worries us is the obstinacy of the vehicular pollution problem. If we look at the history of Delhi's air pollution battle over 20 years, in fact, transport emissions has been central to that battle. Okay, the Delhi has done so much to improve emission standards, do fuel substitution, phase out old vehicles, stock trucks. Now, all of that, to some extent, have contributed, that we understand. And yet, more you do, more you realize it's just not enough. And today, the inflection point for us is that, and that's most worrying, that even after doing all of that, if what your data just showed, that the problem is still 50% of the problem, and it's so big, right? Clearly, what is it that we need to do? How do we build ambition and how do we build speed and scale of the solutions? That's where we are all stuck today. We understand what to do because I don't think anyone is inventing or reinventing the strategies that are needed to deal with the problem. But somehow we are just not being able to build the solutions to the scale. Now here, a couple of things that just strike me. First, one is the metrics of looking at air pollution prism through which we look at vehicles today to control emissions. And we do have more data, as Sarat said, and also Harshal, even though the understanding of exposure is not that big, but we still understand what it is doing to us. But when it comes to leveraging National Clean Air Program or cleaner action locally in Delhi, somehow the transport sector does not get the attention that it's needed. One, of course, is the overriding and overwhelming focus on the dust control. And today, increasingly, we are seeing that the NCAP approach is, the vehicles are somewhere falling through the crack. And as a result, when the strategies need to get designed in a more robust manner, because of this lack of comprehensive attention to the problem, we are not being able to drive it the way that we need to. And maybe the time has now come for the next generation cleaner action to not only have particulate as the prism, but particles, NOx and ozone. Like now during monsoon, AQI is led by ozone many days. It's not the PM, right? Now, somewhere we also have to bring it, even when science is evolving so rapidly, more data is coming in, we are not leveraging that science either to drive combustion, action on combustion sources. So that's one. Secondly is that while we do have a so-called action plan and we know what to do, clearly the strategies we still require that technology level, the technology roadmap, another is the mobility roadmap that the city needs. For the technology roadmap is very clear that when a source of pollution like vehicles increasing more than 7 lakh units a year, that's what we registered last year. No other pollution source is getting added at this rate and in this magnitude, right? Then just incremental change in the tailpipe emissions is just not going to help us. We really need to build the ambition for zero emission. Now, to give it to the government, they are, in fact, if you look at the first draft of the EMI 2.0 policy, we actually heard an ambition of 95% electrification by 2030. Sounds great. But all these intended objectives, whatever that you may look at, and they never get a regulatory push. And we have learned from global experience that the power of regulations to set regulatory targets, mandate, with very strong compliance level, all that is needed to ensure that you are also ramping up the infrastructure and the system changes that are required to meet that kind of high level ambition. So in Delhi, you are seeing changes. It's not that, and your data has already shown the kind of changes happening with electrification. But how do you pace it up? And that's where the power of the regulation and compliance and monitoring will all become so critical, and infrastructure development. And also now we also need to move away, or not move away, but add. So only command and control through regulation will also not help. The market has to work for it. It's great to see the way the OEMs who are already selling vehicles in the market today, the electrification share that is increasing. That means the real investments are happening. But how do you bring in the long-term policy visibility and certainty in the market to really build that investment so that you can also have more supply-side mandate and so forth? But to that is added, but everyone were pointing it out, that what do you deal with the old vehicles then? Now, this so-called, this age-based ban is really not helping us because, first of all, it's not doable, not practical. It's not even, you can't shift pollution all around like that. It is just dump your vehicles like that. But in the process, we are missing the opportunity to build the system or advanced monitoring, identification of worst emitters, and using your scrappage and fleet renewal policy to replace the older vehicle to pace up the pace of zero emission transition. Now the time has come. We see the ban worked 30 years ago when you had no regulatory support to even decide that what is polluting and what is not polluting. But today, technology has advanced so much. So how do we therefore make that transition? And the final point is that the mobility crisis that you're talking about, your data is showing that how congestion is also contributing to the problem. Now, this means that even when you are investing in technology, today Delhi has the highest number of electric buses in the country, okay? But it's not working because it's not impacting the modal shift. The bus is caught in congestion, is the slowest, with the poorest service level, and none of us are going to shift to bus. How do you make the bus work? And that's where we are all battling, because even for that, we have policies today. We have transit-oriented development policy, parking policy. All these have already come up. Delhi already has the rules and regulations. But somewhere along the line, again, I have to go back, that we are not being able to create the regulatory mandate for change. And more important, economic instruments for change. So it's just not regulatory mandate. Along with that, you have to give very clear pricing signal. If I have to use my car, I better pay the true cost of owning and using the car. Are the taxes changing? Right? But when we look at the taxes, we see just the opposite happening. Today, cars enjoy the hidden subsidy from all around. So we have to deal with that, define the strategy as well. So going forward would essentially mean that while we know what the strategies are, but as we all agree, that the devil is in the detail of the strategy. And if we don't get that right, it's not going to work.
Thank you so much. The powerful thoughts. Now, I think considering this further, little bit more into the real planning of it and delivering of it, Mr. Srinivas, if we can come in on the efforts which has gone into it and the solution pathways which you have worked on and how that can help.
Yeah, thank you first of all for giving this opportunity. See, the main objective of our public transport, actually moving people and not the vehicles. That is the tagline. But are we really achieving in Delhi? Yesterday, 5 hours jar in the Gurgaon, but all the traffic must be coming into Delhi only. So that means, while we have done a lot of, because the metro network in Delhi is the highest compared to many bigger cities, still a lot of gap, some kind of gap is there, why people are not really moving on to the public transport. That gap we need to understand. We need a detailed data. What segment of people are not moving and why they are not moving. If I am using my car always, even though good metro network is there, that is something else we are not able to address to the passenger. Probably a kind of, see, one thing which I saw in the gap within Delhi, although we are talking about we need at least 9 to 11,000 buses and good service. Still, that buses are not on field. Actually, currently, 6,000, around 6,000 odd buses are there, and the fleet is getting old. And we have witnessed a lot of breakdowns frequently on flyovers, AC buses or something. Maybe the life is getting over something. But we are not planning the transition, deploying. If some buses are retiring, equal number of buses plus the for future demand, both number of quantity has to come in place, which is getting a big gap there. And as a people, they want a reliable services. If I know that by 8:30 I can get a bus perfectly, like any other place in Germany or anywhere, they calculate in seconds and reach the bus stop, and definitely they get every day. It's not one time. If that kind of service we can ensure, I think people we can move. And secondly, premium services like maybe target audience types, school buses, or maybe office squares buses, some kind of premium services need to be introduced. A similar kind of service quality like car, and probably that type of thing. Then people definitely see morning going and evening coming type of thing. That we still not able to fully address that segment. And another is that since almost 20 years back or 25 years back, we have been talking about carpooling and increasing. See, occupancy here, if you see the statistics, hardly car occupancy is 1.2 in Delhi. Everybody single user, they drive. Hardly any two people move by car if it is for office going or work purpose. How can we increase the occupancy of the vehicle? So I cannot say a car should go out of the road, but how can we pull them? Technology support should be there, like profiling. Okay, a CEO wants to go with similar profile, or similar hobbies persons can travel together so that they can spend their time very well in the car, photography type of hobby or anything. So the profiling can be mapped, and once they, with respect to destinations and other patterns, that can be, so we should increase the car occupancy, some kind of technology intervention plus policy intervention. We should allow that while keeping the safety, security of women, everything intact. So that will also reduce the number of vehicles. And another thing that we need to look into is that parking. So ma'am has said, why should we, are we really addressing the parking distinct facility? We keep giving parking at the office spaces, if you see. So if I'm getting a free parking at my office space, then I'm sure I use my vehicle. If I have to pay to minus lot of, and then I will avoid even taking my car, even though rest is fine, but if I have to pay 200 rupees every day, I will avoid taking my vehicle primarily. So these kind of policy interventions with respect to office spaces, activity centers, then I think we increase more people towards public transport. But yes, public transport reliability and quality people expect. In Delhi, I don't think affordability is an issue. Only reliability and this thing is main thing. So this is how we can move people towards public transport, and definitely it should reduce the emissions. Thank you.
Great. Definitely, this whole shifting, people to public transport is at the center. Need to be at the center of the discussion. Also, I mean, if you want to really think about an open question to all of you, I mean, please feel free to. Racing, what is that racing that ambition means? In your point of view, top one thing you would think of, which we can, in a quick.
Hi. I think I will go back to Namgo's perspective. And institutionally, if we want to have a big change in whether it's knowledge or trying to highlight the transportation at to a place where more action can take place, one target area would be PUC. Our pollution under check program is really, really weak. I mean, if that program is stronger, we will definitely have more understanding of how the emissions are from all the vehicles on the road, and we can always target the targeting that we're talking about. We can easily able to target. Right now, we can't do that because everybody has a green certificate, but we don't measure PM2.5, we don't measure NOx, we don't measure CO. CO is like an index. We don't do HC, hydrocarbons, and we don't do SO2. None of the criteria pollutants are measured in that PUC certificate. Now you get a certificate. So if, as an institution, if that can be strengthened, I think a lot of solutions that we're talking about can automatically be pulled out of that database.
So my take is on the seamless travel, safe and seamless travel to my office, working this thing, and also safe travel and comfort with journey along with my family to wherever I want to go. So that should be that. We plan always late. See now, example, Jewar Airport coming, but how do I go to Jewar Airport? Do I pay 2,000 rupees to taxi for something? They're not planning a mass transit. On buses, it will not sell. So that's what.
Again, something which cannot be driven by the community will not happen. It's like we have seen in the history. Take any issue, something which is not driven by the community, things will not happen. The regulatory approach will have some extent. For example, alcohol ban. We have alcohol ban in Gujarat, Bihar. We all know what happens after that. So it has its own share of impedance in terms of implementing, checking the behavior. But ultimate behavior change has to happen from the community. We really need to involve community, the users, and for that we need to provide the information what they understand, the language they understand. A great example of the PUC. We are more into the ornamental changes. So somewhere there are initiatives like don't give the petrol if there is no PUC check. But we are not measuring what we are supposed to measure. So we have to move beyond this ornamental changes. It might require some tough decisions, but we need to persist with it. We have seen the strictest, decisions sail through this country, be it demonetization, be it the lockdown during COVID, be it, this GST reform. So that has been backed by the strong political will. And when the message comes from the top, that you have to do this. So that is somehow, I think, which is lacking in the sphere of air pollution, the climate change. It has been taken as a soft, outcome, both by the consumer, the community, as well as the implementers. So we need to change the shift. What you ask about the milestone, going to the next gear is that we have to look for hard outcomes, very concrete, target-driven outcomes, which should be, developed with the stakeholder consultations, and message should come from the top. That means there is no doubt, there should not be ambiguity in the message. Currently, there is a lot of ambiguity in the message from the top, from the researchers. Researchers always talk in the scientific language. This works, this doesn't work. There should be no ambiguity. Even if small change, it has to be clear. So communication is the key for me. Thank you.
I quite agree with what Oliver said. And just would say that even though we talk so much about target-driven change, but never ever we really try to demystify in policy level that what target setting and meeting the targets mean and planning for the targets mean. So as a result, as we said earlier, that we are never therefore planning adequately to know. So if we want to say, so first of all, we are not even linking our targets with the kind of clear improvement that we want to see, even though technically we say we want to see 25% reduction, 40% reduction in the PM2.5 levels, but it's just an idea. It never gets translated into real terms that to be able to meet that kind of a target, what is the scale of change in the infrastructure and systems that is required. So clearly that is the working that all of us now need to do, and especially in the transport sector. But then to make the change happen, to build support, both policy, public and political support for change. That's where I think, as you also mentioned, Harshal, that the community engagement and the deepening of community understanding of risk, exposure, benefits, and changing the whole language and narrative around the solution to be able to, for people to understand and relate to the solution, to build the support for that solution. Today, in fact, one of the biggest barriers to change is that any hard decision, especially in the transport sector, and the hard decisions that impact our choice to drive our car. That is the fundamental blockade today. And that is what is just stopping all change, right? So as I said, so one is you do need to deepen awareness, but only awareness also does not help unless you give very firm policy signals on what you can do and what you cannot do.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, everyone, for the great. I think especially the range of things we need to do is enormous, and starting from very clear things about what do we do about PUC, to how do we really integrate the systems, how do we really think about demystifying this whole approach into relatable, people-oriented, how every citizen will feel that, okay, this is good for me and I should be contributing to this, and linking that with the science. The real last person in the city understands this and also links with the science. So thanks a lot. We will discuss further. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks.
Keep it up.
I thank all the panelists for sharing their valuable insights. We will now move towards our second panel discussion for the session, second and the last panel discussion, ambitious policy pathways for reducing transport emissions. May I now call upon our distinguished panelists on the dais for the second panel discussion. Please welcome Professor Ghazala Habib, Professor, the Department of Civil Engineering at IIT Delhi. Professor Habib is leading research on air quality, atmospheric science, and emissions, and her work has been instrumental in advancing scientific understanding of air pollution mitigation strategies. Mr. I.V. Rao, who is joining us online today, he is a distinguished fellow at TERI, Transport and Governance Division. With more than 4 decades of experience in automobile sector, including leadership at Maruti Suzuki, he brings deep expertise in cleaner vehicle technologies, emission regulations, and strategies for sustainable transport systems in India. Mr. Pradeep Singhal, Chairman of AITWA, one of the largest bodies representing road transporters in the country. He has been an active voice in promoting welfare of all the transport operators, while also steering industry-wide initiatives for modernization, efficiency, and adoption of cleaner and greener solutions. Mr. Anup Patil, CEO of Entangle Digital Solutions Developers, a cutting-edge digital solutions firm that leverages AI, IoT, and digital twin technologies to optimize fleet operations, reduce fuel consumption, and cut emissions. His work is shaping how the technology can really transfer or transport vehicle operations and contribute directly to cleaner air. I thank all the panelists again. Over to you, Sri.
Thanks, Kshitija. So thanks again for joining. I think this raising the ambition discussion, within this we also want to little bit focus closer to the commercial vehicle segment, especially the understanding of what is it ambition means within this. How do we really understand the challenges, the likely economic impact, the livelihoods which are related to it. Often the discussion is that the researchers like us who don't understand the real implication of livelihood and the socioeconomic impact, and therefore mostly the policy discussions are not responsible enough. So this has been the allegation, and I think it's fair enough. We need to understand how we can understand this in an overall way, if we can help to understand. So now we'll start with from the emission side. Professor Ghazala Habib, you have done a lot of interesting work on understanding the emissions, especially transport vehicles. And and bringing that to the policy discussion. If you can talk about how this whole thing of role of data in raising the ambition and really connecting it with the solutions, and also solutions, are they working or not? Many times we think we pre-decide that the solutions will work. Need not be the case. Many times we've seen. So how do we, time to time, how do we understand whether the solutions are working or not? How do we constantly tweak the solutions, keep changing the solutions? How do we really, achieve the clean air, if that is the ultimate goal?
Okay. Thank you for the question. So, as you have said, I generally work in the area of emission inventory development, where we use on-road measured emission factor and the activity data to make the emission inventory for on-road transport sector. So we have devised a system which can be used for on-road emission measurement. While I'm working on this since 2008, and what I have understood in last, this 1 decade, that the emission from various vehicles does not only depend on the petrol or diesel or CNG, but it's highly associated with the condition of the vehicle. So one example I can give, the new vehicle can emit more if it is not maintained well. So saying that, I would say that, devising any policy or any, formulating any mitigation policy in this sector requires a comprehensive assessment of present situation in terms of knowing the emission change with the aging of the vehicle, with the maintenance of the vehicle, and with the different type of fuel and different road condition even. Let's say I will also give an example. The vehicles which are running on a very third grade, C grade road, I will say, where there is, holes and spots, the emissions are more because they could not maintain their speed more than, maybe 25 or 30 or so and so forth. This I am saying even for heavy duty vehicle. But the vehicles which are running on a good road, because the combustion will be good, it's a high speed, high combustion, and the NOx would be more, but at least the particle can be controlled. So that is one thing. The assessment is needed in terms of complete vehicle category, BS1, BS2 and BS6, and then the type of road, the type of fuel, etc. Then second thing, we are running towards, reducing the emission just by replacing the vehicle with electric vehicle. We are not able to see that what is the next, what next will come out. Means after replacing the vehicle with electric vehicle, do we have enough facility to dispose of these batteries? What will we do next? This is not the solution. In my opinion, it's not a solution to just replace all the vehicle with the electric vehicle and reduce the emissions. What I would say, if you remember in 1970s when US Clean Air Act was formulated, they tried all the available technology to reduce the emission. They did not depend on one thing, just make out all this, just scrap out all the vehicles and replace them with the electric vehicle or retrofit. They tried to see if whatever available technology is there, can they retrofit, can they reduce the emission using the catalytic converter, using the DPF. We have the technology. We are not using the technology because of two reasons. One biggest reason is, let's say for example, DPF. DPF can work very effectively if the vehicle speed is high on road. In our case, it doesn't work because we could not maintain the speed, or the vehicles in our road cannot maintain the speed more than 25 kilometer per hour. So degeneration of DPF is a problem in that case. But we need to find out the solution for that. How can we improve the DPF? How can we improve the regeneration of the DPF? What else can be done to reduce the organic particles? I know DPF is not very effective in reducing very nano-sized particles, like the particles from CNG. What can we do to improve that? So it's not a one-dimensional problem and one-dimensional solution. There is multiple dimension, and we need to work and link all these to have the effective mitigation for on-road transport sector.
Thank you so much for making that it's such a multi-pronged approach which is required. So I will request Mr. Pradeep Singhal on bringing in the industry perspective from the ground on what is possible in the current, what is that good happening and what seems to be possible in the immediate scenario on reducing emissions from the commercial vehicles.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sabko Ram Ram. I think I am the villain here. कि वे हमारे ट्रक पॉल्यूशन कर रहे हैं. So let me first make it clear forthright that we are for cleaner fuels. We are for reducing the emissions. So moving forward, we have always supported FAME or the introduction of CNG for the LNGs, electrical vehicles, and now BS6. So we always are supporting government and the AIMs for introduction of new technology. The intent is there, but we have to understand that we are not buying any asset or vehicles based on how polluting it is. We are buying it just because of commercial viability. We are the users. We are not the manufacturers of the vehicles. So whatever the things are manufactured, as per the norms of the government, you are going to use that. So if you are going to keep on changing the technology, or if you are going to keep changing the vehicles, you have to see that it is commercially viable. And secondly, that the cost of change, can the industry absorb that? We are already working on a low margin of 4 to 6%. The full industry is working on that low margin. And also, we are in competition with the railways, dedicated freight corridors they are making. We are in competition with the inland waterways. We are in competition with the coastals. So it is a change in the technology which is not commercial viable. It just will wipe us out. So for us, it is not, it is a matter of livelihoods. So we have to keep that intent. So who's going to pay for that change, for that technology change? So at the end of the day, we are the users. Coming to the question that how we can, as the ITWA, I will just limit my answers to the role of ITWA, All India Transport Welfare Association. It is, we are influencing what our members are doing. Around 65% of the organized business in India in the road transport, mainly it is intercity. So we are not into intracity. So we are more into long route trucking, cargo, and other logistics modes. So that is the introduction of ITWA. So I will keep my answers limited to the ITWA. So where we can help, the ITWA can help. Yes, ITWA can run pilot projects. We are, like for electrical trucks, we are in the pilot projects where some of our members are running electrical trucks from their warehouses to for shop halls. We always work with the government and OEMs with collaboration for making standards, interoperability norms. What we can do to create training for the drivers and other stakeholders that we can help. Then what we can do is we can aggregate demands. So that we are doing, that aggregate demands for a specific product in a specific route so that we can test it. And of course, lastly, that we are developing, we are investing in technology and we are developing platforms so that the LSPs come together and we have less of empty runs. So each empty runs, if we can reduce the empty runs and calibrate, so we can bring down the fuel consumption and we can bring down the emissions. So these are the 4 or 5 areas where the ITWA is trying to help to bring down the emissions down, and we can help in this technology. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for those very really practical kind of outlooks. Mr. Anup, you have been leveraging technology in increasing the understanding of the efficiency of vehicle, the fuel efficiency, the emissions, the whole thing which goes into the the functioning of the vehicle versus the cost saving and the opportunities. So the many times it is not, this kind of technology is not leveraged enough to understand emissions and to target emissions. So how do you think we can leverage technology to really reduce emissions through the the work you're doing?
So thanks for having us over here. So it's a two-part answer if you look at it. Let's first understand where the real problem is. If you look at the emission shift that India has gone through, these are quite fast, right? India moved from BS3 to BS4, and within a short span of time, it moved to BS6. Now, did our skill set mature that rapidly? The answer is absolutely no. Do we have enough skill sets on the ground to understand the nuances of each and every after treatment systems that regulators have put into the place? The answer is no. Professor Ghazala talked about DPF as one of the examples that she's talking about. We are talking about SCR, EGR, so there are so many after treatment systems that have been put by the regulators to ensure that the emissions of the vehicles come down. By virtue of we now present in 18 countries, looking at probably the largest repository of emission, database that we are setting on, and we see how each and every country is enforcing these, collecting data, bringing real-time change. There is a lot of, billions of dollars India has spent in rolling it out, but you're seeing that in a lot of cases, either the DPF is not working. For SCR, there are emulators that are added by the fleet operators just to ensure that the cost of operations comes down, or for some other reason, they will disconnect a certain sensor in the vehicle. So technically, those vehicles are not on the road that they're working. They are not either BS6 or BS4 vehicle. For all practical purposes, these are BS3 vehicles that are plying on the road. If you look at from that standpoint. So that's one set of problems. So one is how these vehicle instrumentations are, and second is the skill set to operate and maintain these vehicles. So these are two different set of problems that we are talking about. Now, when we talk about problem, let's also talk about solutions. If you look at the kind of infrastructure that is already in place, that has been put by the government, we talk about AND, our Kaustubh talked about that as an example. We are talking about the high security Nande place that has been put into place. We are talking about AIS 140 as one of the regulatory that has been put in place. Where OEMs are now deploying one or other kind of a solution that is there. In the previous panel, we are talking about the entire POC, that monitoring that is happening at this point in time. There is enough data that is available from these vehicles that can give you insight in terms of real-time vehicle emissions. If you just look at air to fuel mixture ratio in case of certain fuel types, you can understand if the vehicle is staying well within the norms of emissions. The most famous Volkswagen scandal that we have all heard about, talked about, a $30 billion lawsuit that we're talking about, is essentially that is where the OEMs were playing around with the fueling ratios of the vehicle. But if there would have been a simple system that would have easily caught that problem in real time. Similarly, on the current modern vehicles have enough data that is available that will allow you to do that. Once you have that, There can be a concentrated effort that can be done in terms of putting a platform in place where you can really see if a vehicle is out of emission norm, nudging them, giving them enough time to fix the problem, and if at all that is not been fixed, then applying a certain level of penalty, whether it is at the FASTag junction during their next NEA cycle that comes up for their registration. The enforcing these is now possible with the kind of infrastructure that is available, right, on the vehicle side, as well as from the entire regulatory infrastructure that is required, that is in place. What is required is essentially the will for these two different entities to come together and work in a synchronous fashion to make that happen. Lastly, other areas that we have seen is a certain level of transparency that also needs to come in place from the OEM perspective. Although we are deploying a lot of these onboard systems, not all data reaches out to the end customer. We also do not have the visibility or suboptimality, as we call it, as from the performance standpoint. Again, Professor Gazala with a very, very interesting statement. Even new vehicles are bound to fail. And we have exactly seen that a brand new vehicle, 3-4 months onto the road, you've seen the DPS systems failing or EGRs failing, and eventually they get fixed. But technically they are not supposed to fail. So what happens when these kind of suboptimal conditions operate? The fleet operator continues to operate the vehicles on road because he has to make money out of it. So there has to be another layer, which essentially, because these vehicles are designed in such a way that if they are not meeting the initial norms, then they go in a certain torque limit or start underperforming, resulting in a higher cost of operations. So bringing some level of visibility to the fleet operator or the truckers for them to understand that under these suboptimal conditions, the cost of operations has gone up. They're not making money, but they're losing money for every kilometer. That will eventually become a much more bigger incentive for them to take it in the nearest service station, get it fixed, and get a better output out of those vehicles.
Absolutely. How do we do this very quickly in a way that the lag of time in fixing and the maintenance cycle can be much more quicker, so that the emissions are reduced in the meantime. Great. I think we are not Mr. Rav is not able to join, so we will continue the discussion. So quickly to Professor Ghazala, in terms of thinking on solutions and the ambitious approach, you already said that this multi-pronged is the requirement, but also there was a discussion that this incremental changes seem to be not working all the times. So we may need to have a more ambitious reset towards reducing emissions. What would you think as the top 2-3 things? One.
So, as I said, we need multi-dimensional approach. I agree that the existing technologies are not very effective in reducing the emissions. But at the same time, I think the reason is our driving pattern is very, very different, especially for commercial vehicle and the light duty vehicles which are running inside the city. Our driving pattern, our road condition, these are, two major key factors which are, they are putting hurdle in, effectiveness of control technology. I think first thing, there could be a solution. We need to redesign or rethink of improving the present technologies. That is one thing we can do. Then the second thing is, I think, especially for commercial vehicle, I don't see any kind of replacement because the commercial freight vehicle are necessary, though you can reduce the personal transport, by providing more public transport. All those options can be explored. But for commercial vehicle, which are, livelihood for, millions of people in India, The only thing I can see is either we have to make our railway system so strong that all the commercial goods, freight and all can be done by railway rather than, long truck and this commercial vehicle ply on road. But that is also a part dream for us. But so my suggestion is we have to work on technology improvement and also the driving pattern change by having better infrastructure and giving the short routes for commercial vehicle to transport the goods and all. That is something we can work parallelly, but there might be some other solutions. I think other is they can.
Yes, Mr. Pradeep, if you can say that on, how do we really shift towards zero emission vehicle? I know that there is on the one side there is availability is one issue. Another is, but it is also the issue of finance and the availability of it in the right time for the people in a way that it is suitable for them. So how to enable this shift among the private in to zero emission vehicles and how it can be enabled?
What you are talking about zero emission right now is only e-trucks. So we are still waiting for other modes, maybe hydrogen technology or other technology. The only problem is that there should not be a technology obsoleteness, that it should not become obsolete before I pay my loan. So that is a problem. So when we talked about e-trucks, the issue is not about only the purchase cost, which is 2 to 3 times more than the normal diesel trucks. It is about the total cost of ownership. And that is not only the purchase cost, it is also resale cost. Then the ecosystem for your maintenance, services, refueling, recharging. And then we are trying to create these e-trucks on a specific route or for specific product. So my interoperability between the OEM is not there. The manufacturing is still not there. And what we want really is that let us do the change before putting the infrastructure and the whole ecosystem in place. That is not going to work. So again, as repeating what I have said earlier, for us, whatever asset we use, whatever vehicle we use, that is only a medium of giving service. So it does not matter to us. Whatever is allowed, whatever is available, whatever is commercially viable will be utilized by us. We'll be more than happy. So if it is zero emission e-trucks, yes. If it is commercially viable, total cost of the operations is equivalent or lower than the trucks already available in the other modes, yes, we will go for those trucks. But sometimes it can be, I can say, facilitated by tough regulations. Then that it goes beyond the economic viability because everybody has to do it. When the government decided that they will have CNG in Delhi, we had no choice. When the Supreme Court or the NGT decided that the trucks beyond 10 years have to be phased out, we had no choice. So yes, some tough decisions may be taken, yes, but at the end of the day, it is totally a commercial viability and stability decision for us.
So when we talk about zero emission, by replacing the vehicles with electric vehicle, it's not a zero emission. We are increasing the electricity consumption. So we haven't done the life cycle assessment of whole thing, whether really we are reducing the emissions enough or not, because the thermal power plant emission rate is very, very different than vehicle. We are reducing X amount, but probably we are reducing to increasing 2x amount for some of the pollutant maybe for SO2. So I don't buy this. I think just replacing with electric vehicle is not a solution and it will not reduce the emission.
Thanks for that insight. I think we will. The question is also that how the system becomes efficient, and also at the same time we look at the cleaner technologies which are available. Both need to happen. Many times, as you also said, that if there are a lot of reducing entry trips itself is the biggest challenge, and technology can help in, up to some extent to solve those things. So if we can, Anup, if we can talk about how to enable the private, especially the fleet operators, to adopt, what kind of incentives, it's adopting these kind of efficiency measures. Of course, cost is already, you said that cost is at the center of the discussion. Beyond that, what is that in a policy perspective? How to enable this kind of shifting towards a more cleaner fuel, and at the same time enhancing efficiency in the operations. What is that if we really zoom out? What are the policy makers should take away to enable the private? I mean, you work closely with these fleet operators.
So first and foremost, one of the most important for you to understand if somebody is operating a vehicle or a fleet in an efficient way is the benchmarking of each and every vehicle, right, in a certain segment of operations that we are talking about. So once you have that, there has to be an incentive for fleet operators who are operating above that benchmark and maintaining the vehicle in a certain state of operations. With all the data that is available, you can easily now identify good fleet operators versus bad fleet operators, or bad practices that are prevalent in the ecosystem. When you see those kind of things, incentivizing them either during next purchases or during the scrappage of the vehicles, or for that matter, when the vehicle comes up for renewal, these are multiple incentives that can be created. The inherent benefit there, as it is going to draw by virtue of the vehicles performing very, very well and they getting a better outcome, but there should be an added incentive on top of that for maintaining or keeping the airs clean. That is something that they should be definitely, that is a clear-cut area where they can be incentivized for those. The other area that we see, which we just talked about, is essentially dead miles, right? So those are also one of the clear, if there is the right amount of infrastructure or the route optimization techniques that are used, then you can bring down the dead miles significantly, thereby reducing the emissions. What we have also seen is that these numbers are, of course, I had not seen enough literature on that, but in general, the kind of vehicles that we have seen they operate at least at around 7 to 8% of, with a suboptimal state. And funny thing, when we started in Tangles as a company back in 2016, we saw that with one of the very, very large operators, the organizational mandate was to improve the fuel efficiency by 2%. So we realize that how big these numbers are. Even a couple of basis points, if the numbers go up, those can convert into a significant incentive. So the point that I have to your answer is that these percentage basis points, if they can be quantified, which is very, very important, right? So it is just not stating that I'm driving in a good state, but a quantification of these parameters, if that can be brought to the forefront, then regulators can really figure out a way to incentivize these fleet operators on the basis of that, because they're not only polluting less air, but they're also reducing the fuel consumption, which is also a significant load on India's infrastructure if you look at it.
Yeah, amazing. There is a still a lot of scope in optimization. Whether it is whether the engine the way it is running, or fuel reduction, and also route optimization, and the technology can play a lot of role in enhancing this efficiency. So that's very important. So now I think probably we can take one or two questions if anybody to the panel. Yeah.
Before that, I have a question for Contest.
Just 1 minute.
Just a simple question.
Can I add something on what you have said? I really like the points he made for giving incentive for maintaining the vehicle and all. But at the first place, we do not know after how many kilometer a commercial vehicle runs, it needs maintenance. What is the emission increase rate with the distance traveled? That is not known. So if you want to make any policy or implement any mitigation policy through regulatory bodies saying that after this much distance travel you have to maintain your vehicle, you have to bring it to PVC, and that kind of information is needed beforehand to devise such kind of policy, right? Because these drivers, they do not know anything other than like how many kilometers they have run. They do not understand like emissions and all. So yeah, but it's a good idea.
Yeah, no, so very, very valid point. Probably the reason why these suggestions are coming is because we kind of right now inside Entangles, we have already built that tech and we are seeing those data points. And with 500,000 vehicles, that's essentially one of the nudges that we share to the fleet operators where they know exactly when a vehicle has started underperforming and the area at which they need to go about. It's essentially, we talk about three things. One, how major the problem is and how it is impacting the performance of the vehicle, whether it is mileage, pickup, load, or any other condition. And third, giving a very detailed repair strategy. How can you fix the vehicle to bring it to a normal state? So we are already seeing that kind of data point that we have been generating for all these fleet operators. Interestingly, we are working with one of the most advanced clean air body that exists on this planet, is California Air Regulatory Board, CARB as they are called it. And interestingly, we are working very, very closely with them for every vehicle that enters in California state. The data goes to their air regulatory board. They know that if this vehicle is emitting or polluting or not, and if at all, they have a real-time penalty system that is applied. So one of the key points that I always talked about, we talked about how China has done, what Mexico has done, what other countries are doing. But one of the key points for me, for everybody sitting in this room, and that's a statement that I always make, why can't we lead and show the road based on how do we really, really bring down the emissions, make our roads safer, make our air more cleaner by devising a solution that is around the India as an ecosystem. You can't bring a system from outside and put it into it. That has never ever worked. Whether we're talking about now BS7 as a regulatory, there are already people have started talking about it. But we are not even understood how BS6 as an emission operates, or do we even have the skill sets to operate those kind of complex machines? And we're already talking about BS7. So the need of the hour is to create a solution that is to be designed around India as an ecosystem, and then build on top of it. That is not happening. You're not yet learned how to walk. We are always talking about how do we, win the marathon over here. That's not going to happen.
Absolutely. So Pradeep, you wanted to ask something?
Just a simple question. Already we have established that these electricals are 2 to 3 times costlier than the normal trucks what we own. And they are, as you said, that they are not actually contributing net to the emissions. तो भी गवर्नमेंट हमारे पीछे तो पड़ी है कि इसको चेंज करो.
We need just your
See, I am not saying it about the government, but in general, we go for very short-term solutions just to show the changes, to show the world that we are changing. That is the problem with our whole system. We do not think of, ahead of what would be the problem after that. That is what I can say. So I can't comment on government, but that is what our vision is.
Absolutely. I think on that note of need for a long-term change and a more ambitious change, thanks a lot, all the panelists, very, very insightful discussions, and thanks everyone for joining and for the previous panelists as well. We break for lunch. Please do join for lunch. Thanks so much.